President Trump signed into law the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, and that's for fiscal year 2026. And certainly there's a lot in the bill, a lot of positives in the bill, but there's at least one item that has certainly raised concern among many members of Congress, and that is the repeal of sanctions for the nation of Syria. But there have been a number of members of Congress who have worked hard behind the scenes to try to build in a fail-safe to ensure that the new Syrian government complies with the terms that are laid out in this repeal language. So the question is, could this turn out to be a huge win for the people of Syria, in particular, religious and ethnic minorities like Christians there in Syria? Well, joining me now to discuss this is Congressman Josh Brecheen. He's been taking the lead on this issue. He's a member of the House Homeland Security Committee, as well as the Budget Committee and the Freedom Caucus. He represents the 2nd Congressional District of Oklahoma. Congressman Brecheen, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to see you, my friend.
Thank you, Jody. Glad to be with you.
Okay, look, before we discuss the NDAA, why don't we start with, can you just share with us some about the situation that's taking place there in Syria and what you've been hearing, what's happening right now?
Look, there are things you get involved with that, are a matter of positions, philosophy. Then there's things you get involved with and you're grieved in your spirit over. And myself, Marlon Stutzman, a number of members were meeting with Ambassador Huckabee in August because we were there in the region right after the 2,000 Christians and Druze were massacred in southern Sweda in Syria. And so we begin discussions with the State Department, people within the White House. Of course, they very much engaged, and the great alarm over 700,000 people that are surrounded in under somewhat of a siege still, and to put that in context, that's the size of each congressional district, as you well know, as a former member of the U.S. House of Representatives. 700,000 people that have fled some rural areas. They're in an area where in an arid region and within city structures. And the Druze, mainly, again, Christians involved with this. But the Druze, Jody, they go back to Jethro in the Bible. That's where they trace their ancestry. And if you look at our judiciary setup, where we have inferior court establishment in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, that can trace absolutely to Jethro in the Old Testament, his advice in Exodus 17:18 to Moses that you can't manage these people, you can't judge them all. You need to disseminate, you need to delegate, you need to have lesser magistrates. Thus, in the Constitution, Article 1, it says inferior court establishment. He's also the one, great scripture, Exodus 18:21, in his advice to Moses, you shall select out of all the people able men who fear God, men of truth, those who hate dishonest gain. You shall place them as leaders over thousands, over hundreds, over 50s, over 10s. So much biblical ties to this Druze ethnicity, the Christians that have been harmed. And so what the 131 members of Congress are saying by reminding the Syrian people that these conditions come with a watchful eye of the American people is that we really care about religious liberty being adhered to in Syria if they are going to prosper.
Yes, so unpack for us then the NDAA and some of those conditions that you're talking about. What are some of them?
Yeah, so Senator Graham, and if I misspeak here, I'll allow Senator Graham's team to correct me, but he took the lead on putting what were known as snapback provisions. And what these provisions spell out are certain conditions that need to be met, and that the Syrian people are well aware that these are going to be monitored by the State Department. And the State Department is going to have some subjective range to decide if Syria is in compliance or out of compliance. And by members of Congress in this follow-up, signing on to this press release, 134 members of Congress are just ultimately reiterating we want not only al-Shara's governance to understand that the mass murders have to be a thing of their past, but we're reminding them that for those who are seeing what they believe as rogue individuals or rogue military entities, that they have responsibility in this, that there has to be a change of mindset for the American flow of monies, which a lifting of sanction provides for that to continue.
And so, what is your hope? What is your prayer for the Republic of Syria and its people through all of this?
Yeah, look, my initial concern again is for the 700,000 people. Again, 2,000 were massacred, and so with many people with claims of who were behind those atrocities, my great expectation is in the months ahead as they go through the winter, that the humanitarian aid that is being administered, that those individuals, not only for food but water, that they're not going to be starved out in that region. And then as we get in further down the road, that you won't have any more incidents, whether they be rogue or otherwise, that the Syrian extremists have to take ownership in this. They can't. This can't be just, well, the leadership of Syria can't control them. For the Syrian people to now take ownership and as a grassroots movement say we're done with extremist ideology, because they all know the consequences of sanctions being put back on.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the lead on this and not sitting back yourself, and for getting your colleagues to jump on board with this, an extremely important issue that for many people goes under the radar, apart from people like you stepping up to the plate. So thank you, Congressman Josh Brecheen, for joining me today. Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Thank you, Jody.